Welcome to Croatia. For many, it's the ultimate summer holiday destination. Others might associate it with Game of Thrones or its moving history as part of the former Yugoslavia. But Croatia is more than that. It is also home to what is arguably one of the most confusing border areas in southern Europe. And that's exactly where I am now. The place I'm standing right now is called Brezovica Žumberačka, I hope I pronounced that right, in Croatia. But if I just take one step to the side, take a look here, I'm not in Croatia anymore, I'm in Slovenia, in a village called Brezovica pri Metliki. Yeah, you can also see that if you take a look at the road surface, it changes here at the border. But if you're thinking now, well, this is just a normal green border between two states, well, it's not that easy. If you look at the map, the border between these two countries looks like this. We have Slovenia on this side, Croatia on that side, and in between there is a totally confusing mess where you can't even tell what belongs to which country. And to make matters worse, there's even a Croatian exclave completely surrounded by Slovenia and an area where apparently nobody really knows who it belongs to. On Google Maps and also on other cartography services, it's just marked as a dashed line, an unclear border. This unusual border area, which looks so funny on the map and in real life, was actually kind of a problem in the past. As you might know, Croatia is a quite new member of the European Union. It joined in 2013, and only in 2023 it joined the Schengen Agreement, which means I, as a foreigner, wasn't even allowed to cross this green border right behind me just a few years ago. I was only allowed to take an official Croatian border crossing. And years before that, this border situation was also kind of a problem for the residents here. Today, in this video, I'd like to take a closer look at this mysterious Slovenian-Croatian border situation. How can this unusual border layout be explained? Is there actually an explanation? That's the first question. What kind of problems did it cause in the past, and what kind of curiosities? And well, there are actually some funny stories. Okay, here we are. Welcome to one of the weirdest border areas in all of Europe. I think that's a good description for it, right? Take a look here. There is the border crossing between Slovenia and Croatia. I already showed it to you a few seconds ago. But if we walk into that border area over there, there's a lot more to see there. So I would say, let's take a little walk and let's figure out how this border area looks like, not only on the map, but also in real life. Well, the interesting thing is, when you're standing here, you actually cannot really see that there is a border here, or even two or three, because the only thing hinting at it is this sign here. It just says, "Caution, National Border." That's it, there's nothing else unusual around. I checked back in time on Google Street View, and it seems this was also the case just a few years back when this was still a Schengen border. There were no guard booths or border stops or anything like that. And if you didn't know, you'd probably just drive from Slovenia to Croatia without really noticing. What is also interesting, if we take a look here, it's really just the road surface that changes, nothing else. There is no border stone or post or anything else you'd normally see between two countries, nothing. What you can see is there are those safety posts on the side of the road, but only on the Slovenian side, but not on the Croatian side. Here they are missing. And a small addition to that, even though the road surface and the posts change at this place, according to maps, the official border crossing is actually a few meters further along, just before that white house there. I have no idea who's right here, Google Maps or the road surface. I don't know, because also here, right in front of this white house, there are no border stones or posts or anything like that. Nothing tells you that there is actually a border here. Okay, and now we are walking through Croatian territory. It's really quiet and peaceful here. You can only hear the birds. I haven't seen any people here while I was walking here. There are also a few houses standing here with all the shutters down. Well, and if we can trust Google Maps, just after a few meters, there is Slovenia again. This is another border between Croatia on this side and Slovenia on that side. But as you can also see here, there's absolutely nothing to see. No border posts, and even the road surface doesn't change. And if we walk a little further, there is something even weirder happening, because at the end of this village, at the village sign of Brezovica, we will find the small Croatian exclave. I'm walking along the road. The road is Slovenian, but according to the map, everything we see here on this side is Croatian. So we have a tiny Croatian exclave completely surrounded by Slovenia. According to the map, the border then runs from the left edge of the road across the street, and then the road heading off to the left apparently belongs to the tiny Croatian exclave. And this road over here is Slovenia. And if you believe Google Maps, there are even a few houses here right on the border that belong to both Slovenia and Croatia. It makes this whole thing even more bizarre. Imagine having your living room in one country and then your bathroom in the other country. Sounds like fun, right? Well, and here we are back at the start. I've crossed the border between Croatia and Slovenia several times now, and we could theoretically also walk down this road over here, but we will skip that for now. I just wanted to mention it because there is another interesting border situation there. There is a total zigzag line running through the woods, and what's also interesting is on the left side there's even an area where it's obviously not really clear who it belongs to, whether it's Croatia or Slovenia, because on Google Maps and also other services it's marked as a dashed line. Well, but since it's a forest, it's not really that interesting to go there. It's just trees and no visible border there. Okay, and that's how the border around Brezovica looks like. Actually, not that spectacular, right? It looks totally confused and weird on the map, but in real life there is not a single sign that there is a weird border here. Interesting, right? Well, I would say now let's try to answer the question why this border looks so weird on the map. And to be honest, I don't really know if I can actually answer this question, because research for this topic was quite complicated. Well, there are a few books and scientific papers that deal with the borders in the old Yugoslavia. And while this specific zigzag path where we're standing right now isn't explicitly named, the region as a whole is, and from that you can roughly piece together what might have happened here. Everything suggests that the border drawing here goes back to the Habsburg monarchy. The Žumberačka area was an enclave of the military frontier between the Duchy of Carniola, which is modern-day Slovenia, and Croatia from the 16th century until the end of the 19th century. Originally, the area belonged to Carniola, and their institutions never gave up their claims even after the area became militarized and later administratively moved to Croatia, so conflicts were inevitable. The reason for the zigzag patterns on the map is likely that they didn't use natural borders back then, like mountains or rivers. All signs point to them using property ownership as the benchmark instead. Since the residence plots were often scattered, an extremely fragmented line was created with numerous enclaves and exclaves. Settlers like the Jaskoks likely contributed to this patchwork too. They were refugees from Ottoman territories who received privileges and land in exchange for military service. In the early 19th century, the so-called Franciscan Land Survey was created to provide a precise basis for property taxes. And these surveys eventually became the borders that made it onto official maps, and they haven't changed all that much over the centuries. Not after the collapse of Austria-Hungary, and not after that. Only after the Second World War in 1945 there were a few small adjustments at Slovenia's request, but as we can see today, it remained confusing. For many, many years, those unusual borders were not really important in everyday life because for many years, Slovenia and Croatia were part of Yugoslavia. The now independent states were two republics of one state and nobody really cared about borders here. However, the situation changed at the beginning of the 1990s. After the countries became independent, the new national borders were set in 1992 by the Batinta Arbitration Committee. It established that the former internal borders would be recognized as the new international borders. But because they were so imprecise back in the Yugoslav days, disagreements immediately arose between the two countries. The most famous example is the Bay of Piran, about which I actually made a full video just a few months back. To this day, both countries don't agree on where exactly the border lies in that bay. There were also disputes in the Istria region. The Dragonia River was diverted in the 1950s. Slovenia saw the new canal as the new border, while Croatia insisted on the original river course. There were also border disputes around the highest peak of the Žumberačka mountains and around the Mura River. And if we zoom out a bit of our map, we can also see that there are a lot more uncertainties where we are right now. For example, this small village of Drage apparently belongs to either Slovenia or Croatia, depending on who you ask. Well, and also here, around the village of Brezovica Žumberačka, some borders are still a bit unclear to this day. And that also caused a few curiosities in the past. Because I'm not the only tourist who came here and who noticed that. There was also a guy from Poland in 2015, and he had a quite interesting idea. His name is Piotr Wawrzyńkiewicz, and he promptly and publicly founded his own little country in this unclear territory. He appointed himself King Pedro I, and later he even appointed several ministers. The so-called Kingdom of Enclava presented itself with a professional-looking website and was even active on social media. And within a short time, over 130 people were registered as citizens of Enclava. Many in the media took the news with a sense of humor. Slovenia and Croatia, however, didn't find it quite so funny. Both made it unmistakably clear that the territory claimed belonged to their respective countries. And just like that, the old dispute flared up again because of a harmless joke. It wasn't until June 2017 that the Permanent Court of Arbitration in The Hague issued a ruling on this and many other unclear border areas and awarded the disputed piece of land to Slovenia. The problem is, to this day, Croatia does not recognize this ruling. The Croatian government believes that the arbitration process was compromised by improper influence from Slovenia, and so the border in this little corner of Europe remains complicated and disputed. Today, this unusual border situation is actually only important on paper. Today, both countries, Croatia and Slovenia, are part of the European Union and part of the Schengen Agreement, and also I, as a foreigner, can walk around here freely at the border. However, just a few years ago, this wasn't the case, and that also caused some problems for the residents here. They reported problems over the years with border police officers who just weren't familiar with this complicated area, and this led to frequent identity checks where officers couldn't tell locals apart from foreigners. Some felt practically besieged by the constant police presence, and also economic activity was hampered by the border. The region is famous for its winemaking, for example, but the winemakers owned vineyards on both sides of the border. The harvest season, when friends and family from the area traditionally helped out, was made more difficult by border controls. It was a similar story for hunters looking for game in the region. With Slovenia joining the Schengen area in 2007, the situation for the Croatian residents became even tougher, as the border was now an external Schengen border. There were no special agreements to making crossing the border easier for the local population, like special border cards, for example. But as I just said, this chapter is long in the past. Today, you can move around this area completely freely, and given the many confusing borders that I still haven't fully understood by the end of this video, that's probably for the best. Okay, here we are, back in the holiday apartment, back under the air condition. It's so hot again outside. But I hope you liked my little video about the unusual Croatian-Slovenian border. If you did, please leave a thumbs up. You can also hit the subscribe button and ring the bell so you won't miss any upcoming video. And if you'd like to support me and my work, you can also do that, for example, on Patreon. There's a link down in the description, or you can become a channel member on my YouTube channel. There's a button somewhere here around this video. Then you will get exclusive stuff and new videos before everyone else, so you should check that out. But that's it for today. Have a safe journey and see you next time.